And I'm to blame for this. I was telling people how to get out of service when I had never done it myself. We mean well, but we have no idea what we're talking about. Until you've gone through that process, you're a detriment. What we have to do is we have to have conversations. We have to connect with those outside that have gotten out, that have gone through it. Let's hear the good, the bad, the ugly. And I'll tell you, the good's nice to hear, but it gives us a false self of abilities. The hey, this is the kind of the norm, and oh my goodness, you don't want to be part of this.
Hello, this is Tab Bartley, and you are listening to the Oath We Took podcast, the show that tells the Marine Corps story through the Marines that served. This is the 11th episode, and I'm joined today by Bruce Thompson. He is the reason for this podcast. I know so many amazing Marines who hesitate to tell their stories. Their stories hold so much power and so many life lessons. Oftentimes, though, they go untold. Not every Marine story is the same. What is the same is the oath that we all took. I'm honored today to have Bruce on to share a piece of his story. We'll talk about his journey in the Marine Corps and what he does now to help support those who are currently transitioning out. Thank you, Bruce, for joining me today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. And again, like you said, we all have a story. Some of them are similar. We can all talk about Yellow Footprints story and getting on and off the bus. And those wonderful first, 24 hours that make Marines. But from there, the stories change, and there's things that we'll recognize, but then there's things that, like, oh my goodness, I never knew that existed. And it's that small Marine Corps with so many things that go on. And then we talk about life after service, and it's just amazing. So I'm happy to be here. I'm glad we got a chance to hop on here, hit record, and just have a conversation and share some stories.
Me too. And the first question that I ask everyone is, why did you decide to join the Marine Corps?
Interesting you should make this question, because I posted on LinkedIn about this not too long ago. I joined in the 92. I came into the Marine Corps. I was in a small farming community in the Southern California, Mexico border town. And that's all it was. This is one of those towns that everybody knows about. Everybody knows your name. Everybody knows whose kids you are. And if you don't escape, like right after high school, you never escape. I did not like the area. I did not enjoy being there. I didn't want to stay there. That wasn't the life I saw for myself. And when you start figuring that out, it's like, okay, well, what are my options? How do I escape? And that area, military service was a huge way that most high school graduates got out of the valley. And so you go to the recruiting office, and the Navy recruiters, the ones who got me in there to have a conversation. And my oldest brother was in the Navy at the time. And so his experience, I knew I wasn't going to join the Navy, but it was say, I don't have to be in school because I'm over at the Navy recruiter's office. Why not? And then as I was over there, I got a friend who was in the delayed entry program with the Marine Corps, said, hey, just leave their office and come straight across the hall to this office. And it was it. I was done. I probably signed my contract within a couple of weeks. I spent maybe 8-9 months in delayed entry. And, I shipped about 6 weeks after graduation, 18 years old and about a month, maybe a month and a half, and went to MCRD San Diego, and, got the bus ride, got the Yellow Footprints treatment, and as they say, the story began.
And you served over 20 years, correct?
Yeah, I served 23 years, 9 months, and a handful of days, but who's really counting, right?
And what were some of the things, and especially like kind of those more monumental moments, or maybe jobs that you had in the Marine Corps? What are some of those things you looked back? Because 20 years is 23 years is a long time to be in the Marine Corps. You obviously did a ton of things, but what are some of those monumental moments or billets or duties?
So I'll tell you, like many, I was doing one contract, getting a skill, getting my GI Bill, and running away. Obviously, the story changed. And for me, I'll tell you, I came in the Marine Corps. I was a motor transport operator. Got the videos, big trucks, looked great. I came from that community where, monster trucks and off-roading and all that was awesome. So, why wouldn't I? Yeah, that was not the experience I had as a motor transport operator. My first duty station was 29 Palms, California, with magnificent 7th Marines. At the time, some guy named Colonel Mattis was the regimental commander. So I got to do so many incredible, awesome things that you don't do anywhere except on 29 Palms. Hey, you're going to the field for a week and you're driving for 1727, whichever. And some people are like, hey, cool, I'm the driver. I'm going to hang out and sit in the truck, and if you want me to drive, I'll drive. Otherwise, this is where I'm at. I'm like, bro, like, I'm not here to sit in the truck. Like, if I'm here, have rifle, we'll play. So I got to go out and just, shoot all kinds of, weapons, whether we're talking about the 9mm, we're talking 50, Mark 19s, dropping mortars. It was a blast. And those experiences, molded me into the leader that I would become, and to understand we're playing a very serious game. It's training, but this is the live fire base. I'll tell you, I get that young first lieutenant story where, hey, he didn't follow the rules and he had us bivouac short of Camp Wilson. Well, we woke up because someone dropped a bomb a lot closer because they did not know we were there. Talk about a wake-up call. And a lot of people saying, hey, the hell with this. Like, I'm rolling back in whether I got permission or not. And those are some of those crazy experiences. But if you asked me that morning, I was not a happy camper. But you talk to me now, I'm like, it's funny. Hey, good morning. Someone dropped a 500-pound bomb. A lot closer than you wanted to be. And it's, you never know what's going to happen during training. And being there and going through those experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly, it sucked going through it. And we all love the, embrace the suck, because that's all you're going to get. But as you go through that, those are the stories that we remember, the bonding that we had, because, I don't care who you are. If we start talking about field day, it freezing, it raining, being on the rifle range, in Okinawa during a monsoon, and people are like, I hope you're adjusting for wind. Like, yeah, I'm adjusting for wind, but it's not really helping because the wind's swirling. But those are those things. And one of the unique things about my story was, I was motor transport operator. Within 6 months, they pulled me over to be the maintenance management clerk to run the maintenance side, because, and this is going to sound crazy, and I'm about to date myself, because I knew how to operate a computer. Again, early 90s people, computers were not on our phones. We're not running around with all these things. We're still talking big green machines. We're talking, 5 1/4 floppies that, worked maybe. It was quicker to drive, a file, across base than it was to try to upload it. Those are the times we were just getting into that whole networking thing. So I got into that, and I stayed in that. Rarely did I drive. I was the break in case of emergency operator, and I left 20 Palms, and I got to go to Cuba. It's a hidden gem. If we got active duty service members listening, try to go to Cuba. It is a great experience for you. You'll really enjoy it, especially if you like the water. And I was there before you could go into actual Cuba and leave Guantanamo Bay. but had a blast at it. Thought I was going to get out. Went to Yuma, Arizona. It's my 10 months with the wing. All y'all who did the wing time, hey, God bless you, but it was not for me. I'm a MLG, division guy. I didn't understand it. I didn't get it. I did not embrace it, I will say. I lap moved and ran as far away as possible. And of course, I lap moved into be a communication electronics maintenance technician, which meant I got to go to Tornado Palms for a year of schooling. Yay. And then I became the guy who did I&I duty. Most might do I&I duty once. And for those, I'm sure I&I duty is inspector instructor duty. It's active duty service members that go and train select Marine Corps reservists. So we're the staff that's there every day. And, when the reserves come in for their weekend a month or their 2 weeks in the summer, we're the ones that are really there working and making sure that all the training and assistance and resources are there and provided. I did it 3 times. I fought, this wasn't me volunteering. First I&I duty, I didn't even know what I&I duty was. Said, hey, you're going to something called Angelo. It's like, oh, that's Anglico, Air Naval Gunfire Liaison Company. Oh, never heard of it. What do they do? Oh, that sounds cool. Cool. Where's that at? Long Beach, California. You're like, there's nothing in Long Beach, California. Like, yeah, there is. It's called I&I duty. You're out in the middle of regular America, not on a base. And of course, I show up. It was on the old Long Beach Naval shipyards, which had been bracked. And so I got there just as they were blowing up the last little resemblance of buildings. So we had a very small compound, and it was 3 years of, hey, we know that this was your train job, but we're going to have you do all these other things because there's only 18 of you all on the staff running this company. And it's a independent company that reported directly to Marine Forces Reserve headquarters. So, and that's when first and second ANCO went away. And we were, filling all of those requirements that got left. So it was a busy, fun, and exciting time. But again, it's another unique experience that a lot of people don't have. And we can talk about, the other I&I duties and some of the other tours, but that was kind of my, first 6, 7, 8 years that, kind of molds you into who you are. And I had some great successes. I had some falling on my faces, because we all do. Anyone walks up and says, I never had a mistake. Well, the mistake was you listened to them, because they're lying to you. We learn by failing. And as long as you get up, it's not failing, it's learning. So it's one of those ones. And let me tell you, as a young Lance Corporal and having to go and get, arrows and aerosols signed by, the colonel, man, I went to command deck and was like, here, adjutant, I need the colonel to sign this, this, and this. And he was like, no problem, sit there. I'm going to go get these signed. The adjutant walked in to Colonel Mattis and said, hey, sir, blah, 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 blah. It probably was less than 30 seconds. The adjutant came right back out, gave me that paperwork and said, the colonel wants you to explain this to him. And I'm sitting here like, no. Like, Lance Corporal does not walk in and talk to the colonel. Like, the fact that I even know where the command deck is, in my opinion, is a mistake. But that's what my leaders, did. They said, hey, you're going to learn. We're going to put you in this position. And, we're talking about beads of sweat. Like, what are the words I'm supposed to say when I walk in here? How do I report again? Like, this is Colonel Mattis, and the name rang true. And, I've got my own, stories of the many times that me and him ran into each other throughout our career and post service. But I went in there and was like, hey, this is what's going on, and explain it to him. And again, stuttering like an idiot, because I'm a Lance Corporal and I don't know any better. And I'm probably 19, maybe. So not where I ever expected I was going to be sitting there. But it was okay, he wanted to hear from the source why we needed to upgrade, what was so important that it required us to go to the highest level to get this stuff done. And that was my first encounter. And I had many more encounters where I had to go get, work request and shopping lists upgraded by him. And, with repetition comes a more ease and more understanding. And it was one of those ones where people tell you, when the colonel and the sergeant major know the name of a lance corporal, it's usually not a good thing. Well, I was one of those ones that, because of position that I was put in and the fact that my leadership, pushed me out of that comfort zone and put me in roles that I usually would have done, it helped me early on develop that leadership trait to understand how things worked and why things were done certain ways. And we we grow by being uncomfortable. And I was lucky enough, I had people that had faith and confidence in me, and they threw me to the wolves, and I survived. Sometimes I came back beaten, bruised, and scarred up, but I still survived. And again, that's how you have to go about things, because it's not going to be perfect. And when people tell you, oh, I never had a hiccup, or I never had this, or I had that, yeah, they're just putting that face on, and we have to rip the face, the masking that we do off. We all are humans. We all have our moments of greatness, and we have our moments of horribleness, or just sadness, or however we want to call them. But yeah, it was definitely a great experience to go through and do some of those things, before I got into the staff NCO ranks and started really doing more of the upper level strategy and processes.
And you said earlier that you had been on I&I 3 times, correct? Like 3 times in your career. And you just talked a lot about the leadership, but how did that really develop your leadership at all those different ranks and levels? Because obviously as a Lance Corporal, you're doing something completely different as where a corporal and a sergeant, you're now trying to lead Marines who aren't even there. Yep. How was that, and how did that develop you as a leader?
So I was fortunate, unfortunate, however you want to look at it. When I got to 29 Palms out of my MOS school, I checked in, and I was the senior Lance Corporal in the unit. And there was the gunny and 10 of us, E3s or below. Everybody was deployed to Somalia. I missed Somalia by a week, is pretty much what they gave. Said, hey, if you would have checked in the previous Monday, you probably would have been on the plane by Friday. But because you checked in, that was kind of that magical window of we're not sending people over anymore. Now it's the retrograde kind of thought process. So I show up and got my alphas on in 29 Palms, and the spring, so it's only like 90 degrees. You're only sweating a ton because you're nervous already. Plus, it's alphas, and you start talking to whether it's the dispatcher or one of them was like, yeah, you need to go over here, and you're gonna talk to the gunny. I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, I'm a Lance Corporal. Lance Corporal might talk to a sergeant. I'm not talking to a gunny. That's way above my pay grade. They're like, no, like it's us and him. And it was one of those ones, just sweating bullets. Like, how do I report? How do I do these things? Because you don't know anything. Well, again, I was a senior Lance Corporal, so I checked in. He was getting close to his retirement. He really took me under his wings and became that kind of Marine father figure of like, let me lead and teach you and train you. And he said, hey, you're my senior Lance Corporal, so you're in charge. And I'm sitting here like, these guys have been around for like 3-4+ years. What do you mean I'm in charge? Like, I don't know anything. I just got out of school. I still have problems reciting general orders. And you're out here telling me, I'm going to be directing everybody and what we do and all. And to his credit, he put me in the role. He forced me to do it. for the most part, the other Marines understood and, worked along. And, there's always some fight back and push back, this, that. And it's expected because I didn't know anything, but I was in charge, uh, and as everybody kind of came back from deployment, he kept me over on the maintenance side of the house and really helped me develop. And, he had hands off where, hey, you're going to leave him alone. And then I had his replacement come in, who was one of those leaders that you learn from in a negative way, but you learn how not to be, how not to do things. And so I took that experience. And again, I went to Cuba and I was, platoon sergeant, and, I did some training of people senior than me. Got to Yuma where I was in charge of, the training section. So sending people to PME, doing their MCIs, rifle ranges, the PFTs, field exercises, you name it. And so I'm doing all that for a squadron. And you're like, hey, I never thought I'd be here. So I had all of that. And then, of course, you get sent to I&I duty, and hey, there's 18 of us in the first one. So show up, and I was a sergeant, so I was one of the juniors. I just get out of school, so I'm trying to figure out my new job in this ComElect, and it's similar with maintenance is maintenance, but different equipment and theories. And next thing you know, they're like, oh, by the way, yeah, that's your job, but here are your collateral duties. And all of a sudden, I'm in the armory. I'm your network administrator. And this was before, we're talking, Microsoft Office and Exchange, where we actually manually go in there and do it. And this is when we talk about, all of our pre-Microsoft, when it was not as easy or as fun. All of a sudden, if it rained and our phone systems had problems, everybody came to me, and we were a Navy Marine Corps Reserve Center, but I was the guy in charge of the network and the phones. And I'm like, hey, this is a Navy building. Why is the Navy, who's the senior, not running this stuff? And we're as a subordinate unit attached there, getting the services from them. We're like, okay, whatever. And I rewired a complete building. I was doing things I had no idea about. And I relied heavily on my reservists, and I would call them up left and right. And like any Marine, it's the bonds you get. We can say what we want to. We are in a people business. Whatever you're doing, we deal with people. If you treat people fairly, you treat people the right way, you use emotional intelligence, and we interact, that is going to lead to success. If you think, I'm active duty, you're a reservist, you know nothing, I know everything, yeah, you're going to fail, and I've seen it. And so I learned that, and it was, hey, I'm not going to do this on my own. You're an I&I duty. Nothing is done on your own. There's days where I was the PFC, and there's days where I was the major. And some days it was the same day. And that's what you had to understand is, check your ego at the door. We don't know everything. No one does. And if you're afraid to ask for help, you're going to have a lot of problems. So I learned things, and we can talk about, I didn't know what Toys for Tots was. Oh my goodness. I love that horrible program. And it's an amazing program. It does so many great things, but wow, does it take over your life for those 120 days that it exists each year. So that's an experience all in and of itself that we could talk for a couple hours about. Because again, I did it for 9 years, and I had some of the best times doing those events, and I had some of the worst times doing those events. That's I&I duty. We can talk about the funeral details that we had to do as part of our regular, tasks. And I remember one day we did 3 of them in one day, and that was as a unit. We didn't do all 3 of them because we had to split our unit up. And I pray and wish that people never have to go and be part of the funeral details, especially not having to do hundreds of them like I&I staff members do. It wears on you mentally, physically, and as you have some of the experience. And being on I&I duty, we had a Marine who was killed in Iraq, and as a staff sergeant, I was given the task that I was going to fly from Los Angeles to Dover and bring that fallen Marine home. Again, experience I don't wish on anyone, because it is not mentally, it's not a great thing. I mean, it's an honor to be able to do that and to be the escort and the responsibilities that you have. But again, mentally, it is not something that you do. And I've never thought much about that experience. But there's a movie called Taking Chance with Kevin Bacon. That movie's about 95% spot on. The only difference that I had compared to where he was, I didn't go to the VFW and have beers and drinks with them, but the rest of it was there. And I liked the movie, so me and my wife were watching it, and apparently halfway through it, she stopped watching the movie and was watching me, was talking about all the experiences and emotions that I was going through that I didn't even realize it. So those things wear and tear on you. And we're great about masking. We swallow those feels, and we put those feels down deep in our gut. And I think that's why we all have like stomach issues, because we don't deal and process them, because we don't have time for that, because it's mission focused. It's I don't have time for this because the next appointment's coming up, next exercise is coming up. Hey, I don't want to go talk about my mental health because I got a clearance. I don't want to be that guy, that gal. I want to be mission ready, and I don't want to be taking away from that. And again, that comes on, but we have collateral duties everywhere. I think at one point on I&I duty, I had 18. And I remember when I was doing my turnover, as I was going to PCS out, and my replacement was coming in. It was okay, I collected all these collateral duties, but they don't belong here. So let's get these out of the S6 and let's get these back to the S1, the 3, the 4 shops. And people are like, how did all these end up with you? Simply put, if you're an I&I duty and you're someone who gets things done without complaining and just, says, screw it, no one else will do it, I got it, they'll continue to stack up on you. And that's kind of where I was. And I was that guy that didn't ask for help. So, it was hey, we're going to keep stacking things on this guy until he breaks down and says, I need help. And well, at my second I&I duty, I never asked for help. So I was that person who walked around and had so many collateral duties. And I laughed because I had the key ring that opened pretty much 80% of all the doors, because I had responsibilities in the admin building, the maintenance building, the compound, and everything else. And again, I checked into I&I duty while everybody was deployed. So it was, hey, you own the ramp. I'm like, hey, one question, what's the ramp? And they're like, everything inside the gated compound. I'm like, oh, and then it's like, oh, by the way, you also own 15% of the admin building with all of the services and secure rooms and all. You're like, oh, thank you. So it's definitely that experience. And my last time on I&I duty, I showed up. I just came back from Afghanistan. I was a brand new master sergeant. I checked in. It was like, hey, this would be great. I'm in Kansas City, Missouri. I fought and pleaded never to go there because I was a West Coaster, and the guy I replaced was the person I replaced the very first. The guy who sent me there, our monitor at the time, I placed him on I&I duty the very first time in Los Angeles. And the criteria was, I need someone who's been on I&I duty and needs no turnover, because you're not going to get one. And I'm like, oh, like the one you gave me? He's like, yep. And that's, for months, while I'm in Afghanistan, arguing with him about, my next duty station. And, I lost that negotiation. I showed up. I got the high five. I checked in right after drill weekend. So as the outbound master sergeant was checking out, and everybody was giving him his 5-minute, your awesome speech. I got the, hey, you got big shoes to fill. I was like, yeah. 3 days later, he was gone to go be the monitor, and I went to my senior course. Did that for a month. 2 weeks course, 2 weeks post deployment leave. I checked in 4 days later. I'm on a plane from Kansas City to Reno because we were going to Bridgeport for the largest reserve exercise in CONUS, and me and the colonel had our in brief on the flight. It was like, hey, I'm your new master sergeant. He's like, well, you also don't know that here in about 2 months you're going to be my new sergeant major. And I'm like, cool. So I'm the commo, the comm chief, the comm maintenance, EKMS, and about 15 other things. Oh, and by the way, I'm going to be the regimental sergeant major as an additional duty. Gotta love I&I duty. Sink or swim, and if you sink, you still got responsibilities. So by doing all of those things, I became a very versatile and informed individual. I knew how the government travel charge card program worked inside and out because I was the coordinator. I had the training. So going back to other duty stations, you couldn't tell me how DTS worked or what could or couldn't be done. I'd been there, did it, I knew it. I was your security manager. I did security clearances. I ran the SIPRNet vaults. I ran the EKMS vaults. So we want to start talking about what was the authorized locks that could be on there, or what requirement you had for a room to be a secure room, who could be in, out, what we had to redact when we were giving a unclassed brief by a secure brief. And then I'm like, how did this happen? Like, this isn't anything I did. I went from a motor key driver to a maintenance clerk to an electronics technician. How did I do all these other things? But that's the beauty of the Marine Corps. Grow where planted. And we're going to give you very little training, but we expect you to be perfect at this position. Go forth and do great things. And I was very successful at most of it. There's some things I was not successful at, because again, no one's perfect. But those are the experiences that build. And I tell people I had a very non-traditional Marine Corps career. Most people were like, never see I&I duty. A lot of people don't even know that I&I duty is a thing. And of course, I love those that say, oh, I&I duty, yeah, that's a vacation tour. You're going to go kick back, relax. And I'm like, man, I wish I would have got that tour because I never found that one.
But you did all these amazing things, but I think what resonates, at least from the conversation we had before, and like, what you do on LinkedIn and what you talk about now, is one of the things you didn't do though is ask for help.
Yeah.
And how then, when you transitioned out of the Marine Corps, how did that transition go, and how did that not asking for help when you should have been asking for help, right? When you shouldn't have been doing all these things and holding all of this weight, what was that impact?
So my Marine Corps career came to a sudden end when my body magically said, no mas, we're done. I'm not doing this anymore. Shoulders, backs, knees, mental health, internal medicine issues, magically all hit. And it was the realization of, I can't do the minimum. And I told you, I signed my contract when I was 17 years old. I shipped to boot camp at 18 years old and a month old. It is all I ever knew. And so now that's all going away and coming to a very, very, screeching halt. I can go back and tell you from like as early as I can remember, I was the sports guy. Well, that was coming to an end as well, because I could no longer go out and play basketball, football, heck, just run. Sometimes just standing or sitting for long periods of time hurt. And so all that, was coming to a head-on collision at the same time, and then this like huge chapter was being done. I didn't ask for help. I tried to figure it all out on my own. Um, I was very, very unsuccessful at it. But throughout my career, I did those things that you're supposed to. I went and got multiple degrees. Uh, I hopped on LinkedIn. LinkedIn wasn't LinkedIn like it was, 8 years ago when I was in my transition process. Uh, but I did enough, and I found, went to TAP, the wonderful transition assistance program, which really needs overhaul, and the nonprofit community does a much better job at it than the DoD mandated course. And it's because we think we're going to go to this class for 5 days and come out experts. That's our mistake, is we have unrealistic expectations of what that workshop's supposed to be about. But I didn't know what I wanted to do once I took off the uniform. And let me tell you, I didn't have a problem taking off the uniform. Hell, I told you I did a lot more time, wearing a hoodie, and basketball shorts than I really was in uniform, because I was on independent duty and you ran around a little bit. And again, I told you I was the private always to the major, and sometimes on the same day. So my rank wasn't that big a deal. And that's not being disrespectful of the rank. I busted my butt and I earned it and accomplished something a lot, never get to that level. But it was never who I was. And like I said, that was people and relationships. And I went and got my degree in human resource management, because again, people business. But I didn't ask the questions on how do you get from Marine to civilian HR, or government HR, or any of these other things. I never really asked that. I was lucky enough that I was, on an E8 panel talking to our gunnies about master sergeant or first sergeant, the differences, and giving them some guidance on helping them decide which path they might want to go. And a couple of them had gone to this career transition assistance program, out in town in San Diego. And so me and another master sergeant who were getting ready to retire shortly were like, hey, we've never heard of that. Tell us about it. That program is the best program that I've been to during my transition and up till today with everything I do in the space. It taught me what it really meant to transition, and it gave it to me in 3-hour segments, of course, of 8 nights. And the nights were spread out. They weren't like back to back. So it gave me things that I could comprehend to go do some homework on. And it really helped me network, figure out who I was. And we won't talk about that first night when they said, hey, you got to bring your resume in there. And I had scribbled some stuff on a piece of paper, and I was professionally embarrassed to hand that in. And between my wife, who I made go to the course with me, she didn't need it, but she went there because I needed her support to help me. And, Janice Whitaker, who is, one of the facilitators and the person who runs the program, they basically had to kind of take that from me. And as I'm at that low, she looked at my resume, she looked at me and was like, this is why you're here. We're going to fix this. Man, I tell you, I came back 2 nights later and my resume was still garbage, but I was like, yeah, I want you to look at it. And that's kind of that, slap across the face that we need. I was retired. My health was horrible. Kids were gone. We were debt free. Wife had a great job. So I didn't focus on getting back into the employment side as much, which means I wasn't thinking, what do I want to do? I wasn't researching companies. I wasn't like learning more about this cultural fit thing that people talk about. And I was kind of like, yeah, whatever. I was trying to get my health right. And I left the Marine Corps with 14 surgeries. We ran out of time. So I had 3 surgeries left that I had once I got into the VA healthcare system. And that doesn't count procedures and therapy and all the other things were going on. And that's not even talking about the mental health that I finally gave in and said, yeah, there's some stuff up in my head that's been bounced around that I've not dealt with for a long, long time. And so that was where I was at. And that's a lot. Like I said, this is like flipping my world upside down. Everything I thought I knew was going away, and it was all this unknown. And there's no magical answer for that. You have to go through the process to understand it. And you have to find the right resources and individuals to be there. And so I got to the point where I was like, hey, I'm about a week and a half, 2 weeks from being unemployed for the first time in my adult life. That's scary. I went to one of those military headhunting firms. I filled out my paperwork. It was the resume of like, hey, this is all the stuff this is my MOS, my security clearance. Here's a bunch of assignments I did. And they invited me to one of their hiring events. I walked in, they said, hey, here's a job, senior production supervisor at an electronics manufacturer, and took the interview. Hit it out of the park. 2 days later, I was there for on-site. I was there from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. I talked to everybody from the janitor to the factory manager and everyone in between. Tells you how out of it and not understanding of the process I was. I showed up in a suit and tie. They were wearing jeans and t-shirts, maybe a polo. So very, very uncomfortable day. Showed that I did not understand the culture, what they really did, how they worked. But I went to that class. The class TAP said, you wear a suit and tie, dress to impress. Again, lessons learned. Understand and use the rule of +1. I got the job. I started, my official retirement was Saturday. Sunday was my first day as a veteran. And Monday I showed up and was the senior production supervisor, electronics manufacturer, 45 people on my staff. I was working second shift, 2 p.m. to midnight. My mental health was not where it should have been. I had no business taking this position. Now, let me tell you, they paid me $100K off the start. I'm that guy who put zero effort into finding a job and landed a 6-figure job. We'll say middle to upper management out there, because I really had 2 people above me before, we're talking factory manager and assistant factory manager than me. So I had it, charge of 45 people. It was manufacturing. So those y'all who like Groundhog Day, hey, manufacturing is for you. It's a great thing. It was not for me. I was working 2 p.m. to midnight. I was not seeing Neela, my wife, my better half, my ride or die, the person who keeps me sane. We weren't having conversations because when she get up and go to work, I was sleeping. When I went to work, she was still at work. When I got home, she was sleeping. And so we were trying to put all this time into 2 days. The job gave me no purpose. It's the easiest job I've ever had in my life. I had no idea why they're paying me so much. I had Lance Corporals that could have done this job and loved it. I lasted 4 weeks. And I might have lasted 6 before I would have left it, but at 3-week mark, I was headed off LinkedIn. I took the interview, and they offered me a position which was doing more of what I wanted to be doing. It was paying me more money. I had more freedom. I had a real purpose, and so I hopped on that. Well, that was for 2 Navy contracts, white collar, blue collar, staffing. So I worked those off and on for 9 months. Poof, one phone call I got. Hey, we didn't win the contracts. If anything comes up, we'll give you a call. Oh, they tell you it's been 6 years. They've not called me. Apparently nothing came up. Just saying.
Nothing.
So those are all like, I'm going to get into contracting. Hey, it's a fun and cruel world out there. So, we're not living in GOWAT funds or GWAT funds where, everybody's getting government jobs at crazy salaries. So understand it's a risk, but everything's a risk. So don't be afraid of it. Just be aware and understand that. After that, it really kind of got and said, hey, I don't need to work. I've got a retirement check. I'm 100% permanent total disabled. Wife works, kid-free, debt-free. I quit. I don't need to work. I'm not going to. And huge mistake. I got into a very deep, dark depression. I was talking to absolutely no one. I did not leave my house for over 4 weeks. And when I say I didn't leave my house, I'm talking me walking from my front door across the street to the mailbox and back was my level of leaving the house. Me and the couch had a date where we sat there and we watched TV, me and my pup, and we took naps. That was my existence. Again, I was not on social media. I was not on the phone. I was not interacting. But I can probably recite every episode of MASH to you. Some will say that's a great trivia hack. Some will be like, Bruce, like, well, what is wrong with you? A lot was. And then neither after, a month, and this is pre-COVID. I know COVID, people are like, yeah, I don't leave the house anymore because everything's virtual. No, this was pre-COVID when you left the house. Like, I didn't even go to Walmart. Like, it was like, only across the street and back. So she finally said, hey, you need to get out of the house. You need to go do something. And after we kind of fought and argued a little bit about that, I said, fine. So I went and started golfing again. I show up, executive par 3 golf course, because I couldn't play a full length course. My body would just hurt too much. I put my earbuds in. I signed in. I got a cart. They knew me because I'd been there so often with PMEs and going away functions. I get a cart. Again, it's a par 3, and I'm still riding a cart. That's how broken I was. I go to the first tee. I play 18 to 36 holes, depending on how busy they were and how my body was feeling. And I would not speak to a single person. I'd come home, I'd unload, take a shower and get back to my favorite spot on the couch, watching TV, taking naps with my dog. Because, my dog's like, where you been all day? We missed you. After a couple weeks of that, she saw the clubs and all that. She's like, oh, cool. You're golfing. You're getting back out. Who are you golfing with? I'm like, no one. She said, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm going out to the course and I'm just swinging the clubs on my own. She's like, no. The whole purpose of you getting out of the house was you needed to go people. You needed to talk to people. You need to be around people. You need to engage with people. And this is where I said, I don't like people. She said, yes, you do. I said, no, I really don't. She said, Bruce, yes, you do. I said, Neela, I don't like people. She's like, Bruce, yes, you do. Like, you get excited, you grow, you like you're a people person. I'm like, oh, you're right, I am. And so again, it got back out there. I was like, yeah, let me go, apply for some jobs. And she's like, you can go apply for whatever job you want because it's not about the money. It's about you going out and having something to do that you're going to enjoy. And I was like, hell with that. If I'm going to work, I'm going to get paid. And here goes the struggle again. I applied for 3 positions, all 3 within the transition. One was teaching workshops for the Marine Corps family team building. So Franklin Covey, love languages, things of that nature. Another one was going to be the logistics manager to make sure that all the workshops, classrooms, equipment, instructors were all locked on for the personal and professional development. Marine Corps' version of Soldier for Life, Fleet and Family programs. First one was my job. I just had to go through the process. It was already my job. Networking and everything had done that for me. The second one, the logistics manager spot, is between me and one other individual. We knew each other. The 2 retired sergeants major that were making the decision, we had both worked for Garrison and deployed. It was basically who was going to do the better during the interview. And then I applied for a third one, which was to be a Department of Labor Employment Workshop facilitator. Life was good. I was excited again. Well, 2017 had this thing called the federal hiring freeze. I did not get through those interview processes fast enough. And so the two jobs that were either mine or 50-50 shot went away. Talk about I just got out of this deep, dark depression. I was back feeling good, and they cut my legs out underneath me. That third job, I forgot I even applied for it. Why? Because I had the first two locked on. The other one was kind of a throwaway. They called me up out of the blue. It took me 3 or 4 minutes to figure out what they were talking about and who they were. And they were asking me questions about transition. Well, I'd already been in this space for almost a year at this point. I'd gone through multiple workshops, transition programs. I'd learned the lingo. I'd learned the language. It was there. I found multiple jobs. I'd done plenty of interviews. So as they asked the questions, it was like, okay, these are like very, very simple questions. And then they're like, and we're going to give you a topic and give you a couple of days to give us a presentation. And I'm like, do you want it right now? Like, Marines, hip pocket classes. Like how many times have we said, here's a pen, give me a class, and they're like, no, we're going to give it to you. Take a couple of days, adjust the slides, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay. Did it, gave the presentation, it was 10 minutes on the phases of interviews. I was like, okay, you gave me 10 minutes to talk about that. Like, that's really compact timeline, but hey, I got it. Obviously I did well. I was off position. I taught the employment workshop 3 of the 5 days of that wonderful TAP course for 2.5 years in Southern California and here in the Southeast once I moved from San Diego to Jacksonville, Florida. I love the interaction. I love being able to teach these transition service members and their spouses what it really meant and needed to do in the transition process. I might not have been the best by the book facilitator because I might have done things that were outside the scope of what I was supposed to do and allowed to do. But again, they were not paying me tons of money or something crazy, and I was there to take care of my fellow service members, veterans, and spouses. And so that was more important than if they came in and said, "Hey, Bruce, you've gone outside. You're coloring outside the lines." And I'm like, "I'm a Marine. We do that. You're lucky if I'm not eating the crown, right?" But it was me being able to give more and have people understand what I wish I had gotten when I really needed it the most. And there are great facilitators out there of this program. There are those that are there collecting a paycheck and checking a box. Just like I'll tell you, you're going to go find different nonprofits. Nonprofits are doing great things, nonprofits are doing okay, and nonprofits are doing bad things. Sale or for-profits. You're going to find this when you go into any job search. You're going to have recruiters, talent acquisition teams that are going to be the best you've ever worked with, and you just are amazed by them. You're going to have some that get the job done, and you're going to have some that are going to ghost you left and right. You have to understand it's varied. You have to be prepared for all of it and to adjust. You're just like we did while we were in service. We had those bosses that we absolutely loved and would have gone to war and taken a bullet for. We had some that got the job done, and we had some that taught us everything that we knew we would never do when we got into a position of authority. We learned from each of them. We adapted and worked with. It's the same thing as you transition. A lot of people are going to tell you, I'm their cup of tea. And some will be like, yeah, that loudmouth Bruce, like that dude. And it's okay, because we all have something different that we gravitate to, that we connect with. And that's where, as we talk transition, and And it took me just 11, 12 months to find my place post service. And because I'm retiree, because I'm that broken, I have a lot of financial freedom that I was able to go through that without the additional stress of I have to go have this job and I can't quit and I can't. And let's be honest, 9% of the people do not have that financial freedom. And that's where the struggle comes real. This is where I had the freedom and I went to that deep, dark place. I had my mental health issues that I didn't deal with. And again, if my wife had not kind of sat me down and said, I don't know what the heck's going on in your head, but you're not the same person. You need to get help. Who knows where I'd be? And I'll tell you, when she told me that, I went to mental health the next morning. She told me that in the evening, 7:30, I'm signing into Naval Hospital Camp Pendleton's mental health clinic. And told my shop, hey, I'm at the hospital. I will be there whenever I get there. And it was not an easy process. And the first person I talked to was probably the worst person for me to talk to. We were not the right fit. It's when you're going to open up and start talking about very, very uncomfortable things that you've eaten and buried and hidden and refused to talk about. You've got to be really comfortable with the individual or you're not going to open up. And it was one of those ones I was not comfortable. And then, I ran into, someone that I met before, and I was like, hey, how do I get on your schedule? How do I get you as my provider? And like all things in the military, she was doing a great job and it was coloring outside the lines. So she was no longer taking new clients because she was on her way out of that position because she was doing things outside of the scripted, this is what you do to get people back to the fight, vice, really taking care of and doing that. Because we have to remember, the military is not there to help you process out and go back. The military is there to fight our country's battles, win wars, and do the things that 97, 98% of America doesn't want to do or talk about. So, and we can talk about, the DoD and the transition process program, it needs help. It does. But again, you're asking people that job is to mission accomplishment and to go fight and win wars and battles to teach people how to get out. And I'm to blame for this. I was telling people how to get out of service when I had never done it myself. We mean well, but we have no idea what we're talking about. Until you've gone through that process, you're a detriment. What we have to do is we have to have conversations. We have to connect with those outside that have gotten out, that have gone through it. Let's hear the good, the bad, the ugly. And I'll tell you, the good's nice to hear, but it gives us a false self of abilities. The hey, this is the kind of the norm, and oh my goodness, you don't want to be part of this. And no one wants to talk about mental health. No one wants to talk about suicide. I'll tell you, it's a quick slope to go from transitioning out and having some hard luck to that deep depression and thoughts coming in. And I've got some friends, personally, and I'll say this, and I'll make sure Neela hears it because she hates it when I say it. I've never had the suicide thought. I love me way too much to hurt me. And I say it like that because I have a true understanding of no matter how bad I'm going through something, it's going to get better. I am going to be able to figure something out. I'm going to be able to go back, help someone else. And that's going to put me back that a full emotional fuel tank. and that's going to help me get where I'm at. I absolutely adore and love what I do. I get to help people figure out who they are and find their successes. I get to take people that are lost and get them on path. And it's not because I'm the be all, know all. No, I've got a large network. I've got resources on resources on resources. And I tell everybody I'm a great person to talk to first, because I through my experiences, I've gone through a lot of different things, and I talk about a lot of different aspects. But you come out and tell me, hey, I want to talk about cyber. I'm like, bro, I am not the dude. No, but let me tell you about these like 10, 15 people that I will connect you with. And let me tell you about these programs. Oh, you want to get this, that certification? Oh, I've got plenty of resources. Let me help you get that. And that's something that we knew when we did it in service. We all know about the scrounger, the sergeant, the gunny, the E4 mafia. We all had that person we could call and get the hookup. It doesn't change. That's what we call networking. And so we all have this scary thing when we're getting out, and people are like, you have to network, and people are like, whoa, like that's crazy talk. What do you mean network? Talk to people. Yeah, it's basically the same thing as having the hookup. If I need something, who do I call? That's what you have. And some of the terms you're going to hear is the hashtag veterans helping veterans. That is such a powerful statement that you will never realize the full meaning of until you're a veteran in need. There are millions of us out here that will pick up a phone, that will show up and have a cup of coffee with you, and listen. And how can we help? And who can I connect you with? But you have to make that first conversation. You have to ask for help, because we don't know that you need it if you're not asking.
And I'm sorry, I'm getting so emotional because for me, in my transition, you talked about being alone. That's what I struggled with so much. I felt so utterly alone. And you talked about suicide. I don't like to say I was suicidal in my transition, but I was as close as you could get then without actually doing it. And it was, like you said, it was such a dark place, but it's because I felt like I no longer had anybody that I could reach out to, or anybody that would understand. And that loneliness, I mean, it is rough. And one of the reasons why I wanted you on the podcast so much, and you mentioned it earlier, it's not like you're pretending like you know all of these things. It's something even more powerful. It's that, hey, I know nothing about this, but I know somebody who does. And you've now created a connection and another person that this person now, like that's one more person that now I'm not so alone. And the power of that alone in that transition space is hard to even put into words how much that means. And even if like somebody on the outside, I don't think I've ever come to you and asked for anything, but I see you doing it on LinkedIn and knowing that like there's this person that I know I could go to even ask for something. It is phenomenal. And I just personally thank you for being so transparent in everything you do. And can you talk about a little bit about like what you do on LinkedIn and what you're doing now to create that? And I know you have a little bit, but that holds so much power.
Yeah, and I'll tell you the feeling of alone, the camaraderie that we have with the guys and gals that we work with every single day while we're in the shop, while we're in the field, wherever. That's the bond why Marines will always find Marines no matter where we are. Hey, I grew the freedom beard. I got long hair that's pulled back. And I don't have that look, but when you walk into a room, people are like, yeah, that's a Marine over there. And we just gravitate to each other. And it's one of those ones that when you leave service, we lose that for a little bit, especially if you move back home, you move someplace where you're not around the base, you're not around those that you know. And it gets beat into our head so much about, you're a Marine, you're the leader, you have the answers. And all of a sudden you're like, I don't have the answers. I don't even have the questions because, the whole we don't know what we don't know. And I want people to really listen to that. We do not know what we do not know. And that is a powerful statement that people do not understand until they've gone through some things. And part of that is we know we need answers, but we don't know what the questions are. How do I ask this? Who do I ask this to? And again, you can go on LinkedIn, you can go on Facebook, you can go to search and you just type in, filter, prior service, or previous companies and Marines, Navy, Air Force, whatever it is. And you're going to have all these people pop up. All those people, if you reach out, and send them a note saying transitioning service member or veteran, blah, 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 are probably going to respond to you. They're willing to help. But we have to be willing to put ourselves out there and ask for help. And that is something that we are very, very bad at doing because we're the ones with the answers. We're not the ones that need help. We're the ones that provide the help. And it's a mindset that builds us up and we do amazing, incredible things with that mindset. But it also holds us back. So my post-service career, I am a military veteran, military spouse advocate. And the reality is I'm just an advocate. If I don't care if you served, didn't serve, I don't care if you had a great career or if you had a 5-minute career. I don't care if you got out in the best of terms, the worst of terms. I don't care. I want to help others not suffer and go through the heartache and issues that I do. I have gone through and learned as many things about as much things as I possibly can and made incredible connections all over. I'm good. Again, I could, well, I can't because that's not in me, but I can unplug and go hang out at the beach and, not log onto the computer, not do any of this stuff and still, financially and, physically be able to do that. Now, it would rip my heart out and my mind would go crazy because that's just not who I am and my emotional fuel tank would not be there. I do this to assist others. No one should have to go through some of the things I went through, and I didn't go through the worst of things. And I want people to understand that is I had what I consider to be a mild and average, a normal kind of transition space process. And listen, I had peaks, I had valleys, for the most part, I have that mid to just above and I'm doing well. But we all go through something. None of us should go through it alone. 988, mental health line, dial those 3 numbers people are ready to go through. Make a post into a military or veterans group. People are going to reach out to you. People are going to respond. I'll stay up all night, well, as long as I can physically stay awake. And I really listen to you and your story and do what I can to be part of the funeral detail that has to go there. And that's what so many of us are out here doing. We're here because service never ends. We might take uniform off, but our service period doesn't end until the heart stops. So I'm currently the executive director for the Ascend Collective. We are the nonprofit side of Talents Ascend. Talents Ascend is our business side, and what we are is the future of hiring. No resumes, no job searching, no applications. Candidates create their free profile. They list up to 25 skills that they have and want to use in their next position and career. They come and tell us, those skills. They give us the location or locations that they are interested and willing to work. They give us the salary range. And so that goes into our database. And then our members, which are employers that pay a membership fee, and that's how we get, the money to survive, is they can have unlimited position postings. They can have unlimited profile openings. So as they do that, and when they create their positions, they do not do a job vacancy announcement like you would see on Indeed, Monster, LinkedIn, or any other those sources. They list a position and 3 to 25 skills that candidate needs to have to be a viable candidate for that role. Once that goes back into our system, the AI goes and does its magic little things, and it finds these matches, and the algorithm is that. Again, I'm not the IT, the cyber guy. That's not me. I'm the people person. But when it comes back through, you get that, and I'll date myself. You go back to the ding, you have mail. Well, it's ding, you have a match. Those you don't understand that, I'm sorry. It's old AOL. I'm sorry, I don't even want to say AOL. I said it twice. But when they have those matches, the employer we remove all unconscious biases. So the only thing that the employer sees is the first and last initial of the candidate, the skills the candidate listed, the location or locations, and the salary range that they provided. That's it. They don't know male, female, 18, 100, ethnicity, long hair, beard, blonde, brown, all these things that creep into our unconscious beings and might sway us are completely eliminated. They have to make a decision based on those basic factors if they want to unlock your profile or not. Once they unlock that profile, that employer has made a commitment to either go through the process and hire you, or if they decide at any point during the process to move on from you and you're no longer a viable candidate for that role, they've got to give us some kind of feedback as to why. We have zero ghosting. Again, zero ghosting. When it says you have a match, you will find out if you're still viable or why you were not a match. It might be missing a certain skill. It might be a cultural fit. It might be, we went with a better candidate. Whatever it happens to be, you're going to get some kind of feedback if they unlock your profile. And we encourage our employers, if you have a match, why wouldn't you unlock the profile? It costs nothing extra. We're not a military headhunting firm. We're not anybody who they pay a flat fee for the service. They don't pay us anything extra if they hire 1 or 1,000 people. So it's there. We have employers, small and large. Some are hiring their first employee ever. Some are hiring tens and 20 thousands of people a year. We're across the states. Our candidate pool is large. And by the way, Talents Ascent is open to anybody looking for employment. You do not have to be military veteran connected. Now, the Ascend Collective, we work with 3 very unique communities. We have Veterans Ascend. This is for military, active guard, and reservist. Veterans, all eras, all service discharge statuses, military and veteran spouses, and 18-plus-year-old military dependents. I tell you, when they turn 18 or they turn 23 and they're no longer in school and they lose that military ID, they lose that sense of belonging. I saw it very, very bad with my oldest when she went through that process. We don't forget about them. We're here to help that community. So that's Veterans Ascend. That's one of our communities of focus. Our second is Ability Ascend. Anyone that has a disability. Again, we're not here to talk about what you can't do. We're here to talk about what you can do. So let's not talk weaknesses. Let's talk strengths, because that's what we go through in the employment process. We talk about what we can do. There is a million things out there that I cannot do. But that's not what people are trying to hire me for. So stop worrying about those and let's talk about what you can do. And our third community focus is mission to ascend. It is for individuals that have justice involvement and are looking for a second chance in life. So again, we have all had a hiccup. No one's perfect. It's about, changing lives. And again, those are our three communities of focus. Our employers can click on one, two, or all three of those. They can click on none of them, but all of those categories have a higher matching rate, because that's what we're here to promote. We're helping the underserved communities, the individuals that get screened out by the applicant tracking system or the human eye. It's taking this is how we've always done it and throwing that out the window. Technology has arrived. We have abilities to do things in a better, more inclusive manner, and that's what Talents Ascend is doing. Again, it is a different method, and we do not have you sign any kind of contract with us. You can use our platform absolutely free and continue to do your traditional employment search with no harm, no foul. We're going to get you opportunities to talk to companies that you would have never known existed, that might be in a position that you didn't know was a position. And I'll tell you, since I got out of service, there's all kinds of jobs out here that I didn't know was a thing. Again, we don't know what we don't know. We do a weekly a walkthrough. It's a 30-minute webinar for the candidates to go through, and it explains the platform, and it talks about how to optimize your profile to get the best matches. For our employers, we do a live 360. It's another 30-minute webinar. It talks about the platform, and we can kind of do a little demo of, hey, what's that skill that you just desperately need but can't find? Well, let's go check it out and see if we can find that for you in our database of individuals already. So check us out, talentsascend.com, theascendcollective.org. It's another means and resources that are out there for you.
And I'm probably going to have you on another time just to talk about that and break that completely down, because I love that you talked about unconscious bias and all of, there's so much with that we could talk about almost completely separate as well. But so I'm going to ask the last question, which is, if you had to take the oath again, would you? And that doesn't have to be a yes or no. It could be more of a lessons learned, but would you take that oath again?
In a heartbeat. Not only would I take the oath again, I consider myself to have not done all the things I wish I would have done in service. I got to do a lot of fun, cool things, unique things, different things. But I did not have the traditional Marine Corps experience. There's a lot of those things that I would have loved to gone back and done. And I am not me without taking that oath, without stepping on those yellow footprints, without going through the suck, without doing all the things I went and did. I showed up at boot camp young, not knowing nothing. Again, I came from a small farm town. You didn't have to know a whole lot. You just had to get by. And it was not always the easiest approach. I ran into many a wall because I was too stupid to step to my left or right and use the door. But we learned from those things, and without the Marine Corps, I have no idea who I am or where I would be. And there's more than just the Marine Corps that did it. And when we say the Marine Corps, the institution is amazing, and you can go through the lineage and the traditions and the history, but the people that grabbed me, and they could have taken me to NJP and ended my career, but they gave me those opportunities to learn and grow and become who I became. You can never thank them enough. You can't name them all because there's so many, but it doesn't happen without me signing that contract, without taking the oath and doing the work. And that's, as you kind of left the last question, I'll just tell everybody, you have to do the work. No one's doing it for you. It's transitions weird, scary, and different than what we know, but success is out there waiting. Plenty of people ready to assist you, resources, individuals. Just ask the question, and put the ego and pride aside, and just ask the question. And it could be something as simple as, I'm lost and I just need someone to talk to. You're going to find someone to talk to, and they're going to say, oh, I don't know nothing about that, but I know X or I know Y, and let me get you connected to them. And whether that's a person, a resource, or both, that's what is out there. We just have to be willing to admit we don't know it all, and we could use a little assistance.
This is the Oath We Took podcast, and you just heard a piece of Bruce's story. You now know one more Marine and one more piece of Marine Corps history. His service matters. His stories matter. Not every Marine story is the same. We didn't all join the military for the same reason. What is the same is the oath that we all took. An oath that easily could have ended in death, and for some, it did. So listeners, instead of asking you to thank a Marine for their service, I'm going to challenge you to continue to listen to their stories instead.